In between my lobbying for content exclusively from stop motion animated chefs, finding different ways to advocate for myself and others like me, discussing different approaches to AI, sharing opinions about container based execution for modern cloud applications, or any of the other 8 or more side topics I have rattling around in my head, I do have a day job. I'm not being disingenuous when I say I'm one of the lucky ones. I get to work in something that has been my all consuming passion since I was 7 or 8 years old. Seriously. I'm an engineer, computer engineer more specifically. I get to solve problems, and every so often I create them, whether I mean to or not. Recently, much of that problem solving has been focused singularly on this sort of general sense of end user empathy. How are the decisions that I'm making going to land with my users? If I'm intentionally creating friction for them, regardless of any reasons why, I need to make a point to understand the extent of that friction. I think it helps me engineer better solutions overall. Now, not everybody has the same perspective on these different friction points. Sometimes, though it's not always clear, there are specific and deliberate reasons why friction exists. But does it need to? I'm going to spend the next 7 minutes or so pulling that apart a bit, because nobody cares what I think about their user experience. I've been working on myself a lot lately, both mentally and physically. I took my eye off the physical stuff more than I'd realized in the past year or so, and I need to get that back. Nothing else matters if I'm not able to do all this shit when it's all said and done, am I right? The examples I'm speaking about today are specifically related to the user experience of some specific things I won't mention here, other than that they are related to healthcare and the US healthcare system. And these are all dumb, dead easy things to solve for. I'll try and apply a lens more appropriate to some of what's going on behind the scenes to help emphasize these points. And I'll do my level best to keep this train on the rails, because I can easily go down any number of different rabbit holes if I'm not careful. As part of some of the health management stuff I had to register for, I was basically once again asked to give up a substantial portion of my individual privacy. The subject of individual user privacy and individual user rights is probably the deepest rabbit hole that I'm going to avoid for today. In this particular circumstance, for me, the benefits far outweigh the risks, so it was easy to be okay with yet another mobile application registration process. I've got a whole separate thing on how we're becoming our phones. That's a different day. In this instance, given the closeness between this process and the heavily regulated portion of the current US healthcare system, I expected some aggravation. The systems supporting healthcare management are notoriously bad and disparate from one another. Company after company adding systems, not talking to one another, it creates quite a mess. Governmental contracts often don't allow for truly adaptive solutions to problems like the ones I'm accustomed to delivering in the work that I perform. Engineers are often challenged with things like integrating really super old stuff on the back end. And given all the constraints, it's easy for things like, is this actually usable, to get lost in the diaspora? For example, on the first page of this particular registration process, I was prompted to provide my mobile number and date of birth. Easy enough, or so I thought. The problem I'm outlining is compounded because mobile phones aren't natively designed to deal with messages in what I'll refer to as disclaimer-sized fonts, text so small that an old guy like me has a bit of trouble reading everything that's being crammed onto the screen. I see a field named mobile number. Here you go. 10 numbers coming up. Oh, you need my date of birth also? That makes sense. 8 more numbers for you. I call these two fields out in particular because of the ridiculously low bars here. There are easy patterns in these particular data points. The first 3 digits of a US phone number field represents the area code, with the following 7 characters being the phone number. Now, there's more variability in date formats. I could very clearly see the format they were expecting, though. 2 zero-padded numbers for the month, 2 more for the date, and 4 for the year. Except It took numerous attempts dealing with a form full of bottom line of the eye chart size text to figure out what my issue was. And I was really left shaking my head at how bad the experience was, the likely reasons why, and just how easily avoidable all of this was. Those tiny lines of text had turned red, though so subtly I didn't notice it at first. And in the text of those lines were instructions I'd understandably missed at first. Phone numbers had to be entered as open parentheses, the three numbers for the US area code, a close parentheses, a fucking space, the first three digits, a fucking dash or a hyphen or whatever you call it, then the last four digits. Dates are expected to have slashes between the month and the day and the year. The adjustment on my part is not the issue. It's the lack of adjustment on the developer's part here. Like I said, I understand how god-awful integrating with legacy systems could be. Data format issues like the ones I'm highlighting are more or less expectations in situations like this. Legacy systems expect things like dates and phone numbers in certain formats. But it shouldn't be left to the user to make this adjustment. There are literally dozens of front-end frameworks that solve for this validation and do so in a natively web-friendly way. I won't get too deep into this, but passing a lot of the specific characters in the examples I gave can be tricky in web applications. That's another rabbit hole I'll avoid. These frameworks, though, they take that into account. The end user shouldn't be faced with meeting all of these format requirements. That's why we have things like web front-end frameworks, to ensure users don't have to figure things out for themselves through trial and error, to ensure we don't have to jam a bunch of microscopic text into a mobile web application to tell the user their data doesn't match our expectations. I see this a lot, though this particular example is pretty egregious. From time to time, I talk about the need for more developed understandings of things like the application stacks that we build and maintain. Empowering and enabling developers to solve problems with the user in mind is imperative. Remember when I talked about enshittification? In a very, very, very small nutshell, Cory Doctorow's theory goes something like this. Platform rot has three distinct phases. It's something like, first you lock in users, then you lock in businesses to become dependent on your platform, then you manage to alienate both of them in search of profit. Following this vastly oversimplified model of enshittification, I could really make the case for at least the prescription drug aspect of our healthcare system. For the privilege of being locked into a mobile platform I don't need, one that provides no appreciable value to me, I have to allow that platform to access tons of telemetry from my phone. In return for this wide intrusion into my privacy, I get a few bucks off of something I need to maintain my own health. Thanks. This isn't a condemnation of anyone or anything. It's just a challenge to do better. We should expect a higher bar from companies providing critical services to us, like access to healthcare options. Instead of using my information to help me predict my next health-related calamity or guide me towards better care options, hell, even making that information open for other providers in a limited and consent-based format, of course, instead of any of that, I'm getting more ads for shit I don't need from the company that owns my data. Again, thanks for that. At least lower the bar a little for the users you're trying to capture. Think about things like making your content adaptable and accessible to make it easy for old guys like me to cough up our data for you to exploit. I always love seeing where all these conversations go. Thanks for listening. Take care.